Hey everybody, I want to say hey again. Still looking out for you guys. Want to emphasize that I'm using these videos to stay in touch with you. Want to try to bring some normalcy to what's going on. Kind of want to learn what teachers are having to go through by teaching at home. And I want to open up some discussion. So leave your emails and comments and let's see how all this works. I started with TKES because of a discussion that Catherine and I talk about. Well, we really talk about school a lot, and I'm always asking her if what I believe is true about teaching reading. And sometimes she tells me it is, and sometimes she tells me it isn't. And then she always asks me what administrators are looking for when they come into her classroom. And I guess it's probably different for everybody, but I can only tell you what I think. The TKES standards have given them some objective things, but still, I can only tell you what I look for when I go into somebody's classroom. So we'll start with TKES. Of course, the first group of standards, the first two standards are planning, and the first standard is professional knowledge, and that's standard 1. I'm going to read what level 3 is for, so we can tell that that's what we're looking for, and then we'll talk about it a little bit. The teacher consistently demonstrates an understanding of the curriculum, subject content, pedagogical knowledge, and the needs of students by providing relevant learning experiences. So I first got to say that that's a lot. It's really why you became a teacher, or at least I would hope. It's what you learned in college. It's what college was all about. It's the experiences that you've had since the very first day you walked into a classroom. All of those things are bundled up into this one standard. For that reason, I rarely comment on this when I go into walkthroughs. It's really kind of hard to see whether you know that standard in 10 minutes. It is something that I notice every day, however, and I'll talk a little bit about kind of what I write and what I don't a little bit later on. The standard's main elements can flow into other standards as well, and you'll see that that's the case with a lot of these standards, that there's no, this standard is one thing and this standard is another. They kind of ebb and flow, and you'll see where you could get comments on this standard as well as some other standards with the same thing. All right, so let's look at a couple of the indicators. Addresses appropriate standards and key content of the elements. This can be seen relatively in a short amount of time. You have the standards up. Are you going, are you putting the GPS standards up? Are you going over the standards? Are you focused on your lessons? And Miss Sibley and I talked a lot about focus. Facilitates student learning of higher level thinking skills. This was a big thing when I first came to Unity. I always look for the higher order thinking skills, the higher order thinking questions that you guys put on lesson plans. I look for those, but also look to see if you're asking those questions throughout the lesson. I look for the hows and the whys all the time. If you're asking those throughout the lesson, it's a good indicator that you are asking higher order thinking questions. When I'm outside the observation, I ask teachers questions in meetings so that I can really better understand what their goals and expectations are for their students. This usually happens in SPED meetings or in RTI meetings, but it's one of the things that I always look at. A lot of times I ask teachers, the teachers that really impress me are the ones that tell how and why they do things off the cuff. And it's crazy to see how teachers interact when you're talking about education. You can really tell if a teacher is passionate about teaching in these meetings. One element of the standard that gets overlooked sometimes is this, and I'm going to kind of read it. Displays an understanding of the intellectual, social, emotional, and physical development of the age group. We work in a place where the social and emotional needs of students are very important. We're always having to take that into consideration when we plan. But we also have to hold these students to a high standard. So how are you making sure that the students are held at a high standards and looking after their social and emotional needs? It can be hard, and I understand this. I think everybody that works at Unity understands this, but it's one thing that we really have to focus on. So then, here's the questions that you can ask yourself. These are questions that I kind of ask. Do you know the content? For example, are you up to date on what current research says about the subject or about the grade level that you're teaching? The next question would be, do you know how to teach? For example, are you using teaching strategies that will get you the outcome that you desire? And we'll talk about teaching strategies later, because that's one of the standards in the TKES. And do you know what to teach would be the next question. For example, are you using the Georgia Performance Standards as a guide to teach? And are you making sure that you're using the standards that have the biggest impacts on the student's future? And are those the ones that you're spending the most time on? Do you know who you're teaching? We've already discussed this a little bit. Have you built those relationships with those students? Are you teaching the students? Are you teaching with the student population in mind? Those types of questions. So there really is a lot to this standard. It's very deep. So I'll tell you this, I really always wanted to know how I was being evaluated. And then I try to do things that I could to prove that I was doing well in those things. So if it was me, I would be asking myself those questions. I don't want this to come across as judgmental. I always want to look for the things that people are doing right. So, and I think we're doing a lot of these things correctly at Unity. But I do think, if you know what I'm thinking when I look at this standard, and if you see a way that you can improve, or you see a way you want to improve yourself, or if you see a way that I look at the standard that you think is different, or the way how I interpret the standard, then I think it would be good discussion. If you have any questions or comments, you can email me, or you can leave comments in the thing. I really want us to stay in touch during this time. You guys are all in my thoughts and prayers. I've been thinking about you guys every day since we got off. I'm also going to leave some links, I think, in the YouTube channel if I can figure that out. So thanks, and have a great day.